All right, welcome in everybody. The debut of the Pro Hockey West Report. Scott Strandy proudly with you tonight, along with Nick Maxon up in the upper left-hand corner, Paul Hornstein up in the upper right, and Stephen Marsh on the lower left. We will be breaking down the NHL Draft tonight. This will be the first show where we will actually dive in and start talking professional hockey in the West. So we're thrilled to be here. We hope you are enjoying the show on Twitter Live. Next week, it will be recorded, and you'll be able to watch us whenever you feel like watching us. So I don't know what happened to Stephen Marsh. We lost Stephen. That's okay.
Hey, he was
Nick,
overwhelmed. He was overwhelmed.
Yeah, Nick, how are you tonight?
Doing pretty good, Scott. Again, it's what do you call it? It's Christmas in July for hockey fans, so happy to be here. Happy to be breaking down some NHL news and see how she goes. A lot of things, also a lot of crazy trades too, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Absolutely, Paul Hornstein, how are you?
I'm doing very, very well. It's been a busy 24 hours, but we're doing good. And
like your backdrop, by the way. Love your backdrop.
Thank you.
It's very good. Stephen Marsh, how are you doing? Besides drifting in and out of our scene here, so
the first show, I'm already having internet connections, but I think I got it solved. So we're off to a great start already.
All right. Well, your Vegas Golden Knights have already given up their pick, and Buffalo got it. So sit back, relax.
I had an easy night. No Golden Knights picks tonight.
Yeah, I hear you. Well,
I think they still have more. I think they still have more picks than the Avalanche do, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Avalanche probably have 3 all draft. 2 now, all draft. Oh, I thought it was 2 or 3, but yeah. Anyway, I think they're okay though. They're hosting the Stanley Cup party everywhere they go, so we're okay. Okay, let's jump into this thing. Nick, I want you to start off with this crazy day in trades, and then we will all banter around with that if we can.
Sure. So 3 big trades here at the draft table, but more importantly, a couple before the trade table. First one of the day coming from the Rangers and the Colorado Avalanche. And Scott, I'll probably bring you in for some extra analysis here. But this one involves the Stanley Cup winning champion Avalanche, and it's Alexander Georgiev being traded to Colorado from the New York Rangers. This is in exchange for a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick in this tonight's draft, actually tonight and tomorrow night's draft here, and also a 3rd-round pick in a 2023 NHL draft. So, Scott, you heard some direct knowledge here from the agent of Darcy Kemper. A lot of questions were surrounding him and his status with the organization. What have you heard?
Well, let me tell you, it was a cordial meeting from what I understand. It just came down to strictly this, guys. Darcy Kemper is going to get paid. As we know, he's a Stanley Cup winning goaltender now. There's not many of them out there this year, particularly. And the Avalanche are up against the cap just a bit if they want to re-sign players. I know 2 guys that they have really high on their list to re-sign are Nazem Kadri and Josh Manson. And by making this trade and bringing in a guy that's a restricted free agent, they're getting him around $2.2 million this year. He's going to get a little bump because they'll try to redo the deal for him. They think they have a number 1, but they also know that they're going to split time. I've heard things like 60-40 with backup goaltender Frankie. Pablo
Francouz, yeah.
Yeah, so right now we're talking the Georgie and Frankie show here in Colorado.
So yeah, big trade there to start off the day, and then not too long later, this one had been rumored for some time. Alex DeBrincat on the table for Chicago, and he is finally moved this time to the Ottawa Senators in exchange for the number 7 pick here tonight in the 1st round, and then a 2nd-round pick, which will be tomorrow, number 39 overall, and then a 3rd-round pick in 2024. Scott, just some immediate reaction from me on this, and then I'll pass it over to you or anyone who wants to chime in. It's interesting to me because, to me, I think DeBrincat has a lot of trade value, and you know, Davidson has said multiple times that he didn't want to force a trade. I've been on the fence where I've said on other outlets that I think you do need to trade him now, but I do feel like this is a bit of a force. I'm curious to see your take on this trade and more importantly, the return, which I feel like Chicago did not get full trade value for a 40 goal scorer in the NHL.
And not for a kid with that much upside. That's my gut feeling on it. Steven, your thoughts on DeBrincat?
I'm just surprised because he's a young player. He was pretty good for the Blackhawks, and I think if you're the Blackhawks, you're trying to rebuild yourself. You're trying to get back into the winning ways and contend for championship. I would have thought he was going to be one of the bright spots, one of the future of that team. I mean, he was just I mean, the energy he brought to the Chicago lineup was really incredible. So it's a surprise, because it's like maybe they're going backwards a little bit. I would think that somebody like him would be successful. Maybe because they see him valuable right now, they could get some in return. But I just didn't see the return really being back in return for what they traded him away.
Well, I think that when it's almost public knowledge that you're looking to get rid of players because you're in a rebuild, it's hard to get true value for somebody. I think that, getting and being able to flip for first round picks when I don't think they had any going into the draft. You now got, you were able to flip guys for 2 first round picks and 2 basically top 15 picks. You're going to build back up a little bit faster. The question remains with the Blackhawks now, what do you do with Taves and Kane? You're obviously not going to get as much for those guys as you were going to get for DeBrincat because of age and cap. Okay, so what were you going to do? You got a first round pick and were able to flip a second first round pick out of the deals. I think that the Senators are going to have a nice top 2 lines now, and start to kind of get back maybe into the swing of things because you don't have to try and you can't just shut down one line now. You're going to have a bunch of 20 goal scorers on that team, 5 or 6 guys deep. And so I think it's a good deal for Ottawa. And the Blackhawks, like I said, this in the cap era, this is the deal, right? You make your quote unquote deal with the devil. You won 3 cups. You tried to win a few more, but eventually you have to rip it down and start it over again. And this was the piece that was going to help them do that more than any other piece.
Happens everywhere, Nick. More trades in Montreal with the draft, and then they jump out and they don't take who everybody thought they were going to take. And then they make some trades right up front.
So not only do we get DeBrincat out of Chicago, but then the Islanders get Alexander Romanov from Montreal and a 4th round pick in exchange for the number 13 pick. And then how about this? Montreal flips that 13 pick to Chicago for Kirby Dach and also a 3rd round pick in 2022. So, Paul, I think to your point, and I think, Scott, I'll start with you. Does this signal the true start of the rebuild? You'd almost want to think it does if DeBrincat and Kirby Dach are gone. And I think for Paul, I'll get your comments here is, the question mark is how long do we see Kane and Taves in a Chicago uniform?
Well, that's it, right? I mean, we don't know at this point. It's hard to trade those guys, like I said, because what are they making? About $10 million a piece?
They're making $10 million a piece. For this last year.
Hold on a minute, though. There's a difference between those two. Kane is tradable, and there are teams. I know the Avalanche were looking at him at the trade deadline. There are teams that want Kane because he just have some a lot more upside still. And my connection with Jonathan Taves goes way back to North Dakota. I love the guy. I think he's a great guy, but he's had some issues. He missed the whole season. He's getting up there in age. His trade value is weak. He may be part of the quote unquote rebuild because he's a veteran captain. He might be the Shane Doan of Chicago, like Shane was for Arizona, where he hung around and taught the guys the right way to play the game and the way to be professional. That's my gut feeling anyway.
Well, I think you're going to do that and those guys are probably the perfect trade deadline acquisitions, because by the time the end of the season rolls around, you've now eliminated most of the cap issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you would get maximum return for a guy like that, or either one of those guys, to a Stanley Cup contender that wants that guy in the locker room to say, okay, guys, this is how you not only get past the first round, this is how you get all the way to carry the trophy at the end of the year. Follow us. We know how to do that.
Steven, your thoughts on Chicago? Is this the start of, literally pulling the tablecloth from the table, or or are they going to try to stick it around for another year?
Yeah, it's probably the pulling of the tablecloth, and it's a matter of whether the cups and the plates stand upright or they all fall off the table and shatter and all break apart. But it's really going to be interesting to see where Chicago goes. I mean, Chicago was a team, and of course they have a new coach too. But it's one of those things where you kind of go for the Chicago, maybe looking like they were going to be a decent team to contend with. They had Fleury there for a while, but they obviously didn't have the. There was some issues behind the scenes that from the past that got resolved, and everything's kind of clean slated there with front office wise, and it seems like with the team too. So maybe that's a good thing. But you still got you said the core guys are there in Taves and stuff, and maybe they're still going to be around, and those guys aren't going to go anywhere. But now, yeah, you lose both Doc and DeBrincat, and again, I thought the guys were gonna be maybe the sort of the future of that team, and the question now becomes is who's gonna provide the offense, and who's gonna provide the spark for the Blackhawks. I mean, it's those are two big contributors for what success they did have in their games, and now they're gone.
Interesting too with Chicago, 2 first-round picks tonight, and then for the next couple of rounds, 3 picks in the second round, 4 picks in the third round. That's for this year. Then there's 2 first-round picks in both 23 and 24. So I believe that this is the start of the rebuild here. Last trade of the night, Arizona. In our neck of the woods, acquiring the number 11th pick in this year's draft in exchange for San Jose's number 27 pick and 2 second-round picks. So Arizona using some of their draft capital to move up in the draft. And that pick, Scott, if I can get my notes back here for us just quickly, end up being a pretty good player for Arizona. In fact, it would be Connor Geekie. Yes, that was that pick, and a player that could be an immediate impact player. Arizona taking Logan Cooley up in the upper echelon of the draft. He's slated to be a freshman at the University of Minnesota. So does Connor Geekie make his NHL debut this year, or does he need some more development?
We'll find that out in just a couple of weeks, I'm sure, during development camp and where they go. The Coyotes, in all fairness, have quite a stockpile of young players that either were drafted in the last couple of years or will be drafted this year. What I will say is there was no secret that they wanted to get younger and get big and be right down the middle of the ice. They went and got 2 centers. That's where they're looking at. I think it's got a lot to do with the pitchfork logo. They want big guys to skate over that quite frequently. That was a little big at Paul Hornstein. But anyway.
Wait, get younger? How the heck can you get younger than the Coyotes?
Well, true. But they believe in a long rebuild. As we know, their plan for the future is 5, 6, 7 years down the road. So you want some guys that are 18, 19, 20
they're waiting for their Tempe arena to be open before they really take off and start contending for Stanley Cups.
Yeah. Well, there was talk about them trying to get Nazem Kadri. I told everybody if Naz goes there, I will fall off my chair and bump my head for some serious concussion. Yeah, again, for some serious concussion, because I just don't see that happening. I don't see them being able to attract any free agents. So they're going to do this. They're going to make moves to get draft picks. They got 2 really good ones. How they develop, I mean, they got Barrett Hayton, and they thought he was going to be really good, and he's been slow to develop. I still think he'll be okay. But they got size, and they got guys that are good down the middle. So, I mean, how can you blame them on that? They still got a bunch of picks left. I'm sure there's going to be some more wheeling and dealing and see what happens and go from there.
Well, these are really dynamic offensive players. Now, obviously, Nick mentioned, does one or both go back and stay and play college hockey, with Cooley going to
The
the
true maroon and
Minnesota,
gold.
that other maroon and gold team, the one by you, Nick, and
Hey, Nick, can you reach him and want to punch him? Go ahead. If you can
that's
just
okay.
reach out and
And
do
throw him
my
a good
best.
left.
and Geeky, a big offensive player, big playmaking type guy, with a lot of offensive skills. Okay, they need these kind of guys. It's they need these players to make to get Clayton Keller. I mean, a little bit of relief. Nick Schmaltz had good years. This is maybe not this year coming up, but this makes Krause and Hayton better players, because now they are going to have more offensive depth, and they could still take a third. There are still some really good offensive players that are still left in the draft.
That Dylan Gunther had a great season last year in preseason. Dylan Gunther might have been their best player, and they sent him back for seasoning. So they got some guys in the pipeline. I think through the first 11 picks, they did really well. To be honest with you, I don't know where they're going to play. That's the problem with the Coyotes.
Well, that's different.
We're not going to get into that tonight because we don't have time. But
that's an hour show, Nick. That's an hour show in itself.
That's a little more than an hour, Stephen.
A 3-part show, 3-part hour show.
But these are dynamic offensive players that this organization needs. I even could see them going for a third offensive player with that last first round pick. I know somebody else. We know the story with Jacob Chitrin. He's really head and shoulders above their other defensemen. He's a tradable piece, but is he really? If you trade him,
going anywhere. Not going anywhere.
If you trade him, what are you saying? You're saying to your fans that we're trying to build the team the right way, and he's a guy
the centerpiece. He's the C word.
Absolutely, he's the guy that puts the letter on the jersey that curves, and you can't trade that guy.
If he was going to be traded, it would have been done last year when they could have got maximum value for him right before the trade deadline. It's not happening. He's going to be around. I just don't see it. Like I said, it's going to be a very young Coyotes team. I think they're looking at next year. Is Connor Bedard going to be an option for him? If they're going to be not a very good hockey team, because let's not forget they're playing 20 of their first 24 games on the road.
Yeah,
they're going to come into the second half of the season really reeling. I got a feeling. Nick, you got more, Paul, or what?
I was going to say, as watching the Islanders have to go through that last year.
Yeah,
waiting for their arena to,
it's brutal.
I mean, it's not the only issue that the Islanders had for a team that was expected to make a run at a cup, because they actually kind of got through that opening road trip 500. But between COVID and injuries and everything else, they really had a struggle. But that was nothing compared to this Coyotes schedule, which is absolutely
brutal.
I mean, we're not going to get into the reasons for it. We all know the reasons for it. But they're basically being put in a position to once again get that number 1 overall pick. And if you don't know the name Connor Bedard by now,
he's a
you're a hockey fan, that is an absolute 100% game changer. He was by far and away, in the few games that we got to see in the World Junior Championships before they postponed it, he was head and shoulders the best player.
Yep.
And
all right, Nick, get to the draft here before we run out of time.
So that was all the trades.
Yeah.
We're already 20 minutes in. See how fast it's going?
So that let's start with the first overall pick. Now, kind of, I don't know if controversial is the word here, Scott, but it was been Shane Wright's draft up until a Bob McKenzie post, apparently, just a couple of days ago, where it was Juraj Slavkovsky that was the left winger that was playing overseas for Finland, TPS. And it was him that was the first pick for the Montreal Canadiens. Big shooting left winger. So previous highest player from the country of Slovakia. In fact, I know the other guy that was the higher pick, and that was number 3 in 2000. That's one-time Cup winner Marian Gaborik. So pretty cool for the country of Slovakia to have a first overall pick, and yeah, just a pretty good pick there. I don't know, Steve. Let's go to you for that.
Well, I just want to throw this out there. Do you think there was extra pressure on Montreal because this draft was at home and they had the first pick? I mean, how often does that happen? It doesn't happen very often where you get the number 1 pick and when you're hosting the draft. So that, I mean, they made the trades that they made, and then of course this pick. And you're right. Everybody thought it was going to be Shane Wright, but they decided not to go that route, and they decided to go with Europe. So that's I don't know.
Scott, some of the articles that are out there, me and Paul were talking pre-show is, and we'll get to Shane Wright eventually. He did drop a few spots, not to number 1 and not even to number 2. Some concerns maybe with his, I don't know if you want to call it maybe professionalism, maybe is the best word to describe it, or maybe just effort on the ice, big enough to scare away a couple of teams.
Scared away one that I know of, but anyway. Anyway, we won't get into that at the moment, but I think a couple of things, Nick. I think the Montreal fans were kind of thinking up until maybe the announcement was made that he was going to be their pick. He's Canadian, would have been a big thing. Then I think they got a second thing when Commissioner Bettman came up and said, "I've got 2 trades and they both involve Montreal," and Shane Wright was still on the board. I think the fan base was thinking, we're going to get him at number 4. We're going to get our guy at number 1. We're going to get Shane Wright at number 4. But they didn't do that. They didn't get the number 4 pick. And he ends up going to Seattle. I think that's a fantastic fit for him. I think he's going to fit right in under the Dave Haxtell style. I think he'll be a leader on a team that needs a leader. I think he's going to work with Matty Beniers very, very well. So I think he ended up in the right spot. I think he might have been a little disappointed that it was 4 instead of 1, but he's going to be, in my estimation, a lot better player in Seattle than he's going to be in Montreal, or would have been in Montreal.
I think being part of the Montreal organization brings a lot of weight to players. I mean, there's so much history with pressure. That. I mean, look at Pacioretty when he was the captain, then he came to Vegas, and he's been pretty good for the most part here. There's not as much pressure on him. He's not the guy that there's a lot of weight that carries being part of the Canadians. All the pressure of being with that organization. Now he goes
especially being a Canadian.
Being a Canadian, exactly. But now he goes to Seattle. Seattle's still a new team, right? And they're still kind of, they're the new team in town. People don't expect much from them yet. They're trying to get there, but so it's a good place if you're starting to develop at this stage, and a good fit for him. There's not plus it's in the States and not in Canada, so I think all that will be helpful for him too.
Let me ask this, and in addition to what Scott has mentioned about teams being a little bit head scratchy about Wright, was there draft exposure fatigue as part of this? That he's been the number 1 pick for so long, he basically has had his bones picked to dry by the vultures, so to speak, and it just got to the point where we want the new toy.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't want to get into what I heard because I just don't think that's the other time to do it. But he wasn't going to be an Arizona Coyote if they'd had the first pick. Anyway.
Well, the other thing too is going into this draft, I think we heard too a lot about that this draft class wasn't necessarily as strong as draft classes in the past, where you have obviously the established number 1, that this is the clear guy, and number 2, the top. I mean, he was the guy that they thought was going to go number 1, but there was also some, it's not like clear cut. There was, it was a little bit more.
I think what you're saying is, I think what you're saying, Stephen, is that there wasn't that clear number one guy like there has been in the past. But this
he was kind of
designated.
extremely deep. Kind of, very deep. But the top core, I think that's what made it. It could have been a lot of people that got the number one pick. So I think he was kind of the guy that was kind of branded that towards the end here, but during the process. But it shouldn't come as a total surprise that Montreal went a different route, because I think that was kind of a way that it could have happened too.
Yeah, and they had other things in the works. So next, number 2.
Yes, other things in the works, and sometimes these things. It's a small comment to wrap it up. When you drop your grab, maybe it's an extra spark for him as he goes to Seattle, and if he makes his NHL debut this year. So the number 2 pick, Simon Nemec, going to the New Jersey Devils, a defenseman from Slovakia. Pretty good. We'll say it that way. Again, we talked about Logan Cooley going number 3 to Arizona, center from the U.S. Development Program. Again, will be a freshman at the University of Minnesota. Shane Wright, again, the center from Kingston, is the number 4 overall pick to Seattle, a place where they definitely need centers. They definitely need some more offensive depth there with the Kraken, so he could fill that role. Number 5, we'll keep moving along here. Philadelphia going with the left wing with Cutter Gauthier. This guy could be, I think, the steal of the draft as a left wing of the development program again here in the U.S. Big, strong kid, maybe not the most offensively skilled, but definitely a fast guy that can do well in small spaces. So a good pick there at number 5. We'll go to 10, and then we'll do some wrap-up comments here just to make sure that we stay on time here. Columbus with the 6th overall pick, they get David Juracek. Again, another defenseman from Czechia. Chicago, Kevin Korchinski, defenseman from Seattle in the WHL at pick number 7. The Red Wings at pick number 8. Marco Kasper, a center from Rogel, Sweden. And then Buffalo getting a pretty good one here. Matt Savoy, another center from Winnipeg in the WHL. Maybe that namesake sounds familiar to some of our listeners, right? And then finally at pick number 10, Pavel Mintyukov, from Saginaw, a defenseman going to Anaheim. That runs at the top 10. Scott, any surprises or anything that, or I guess, how do you think of the picks so far?
The only surprise, I think, is that typically, like when you don't have a top guy, you don't have a Connor McDavid or a Austin Matthews, you look for the best available. But this draft was completely different. This was teams picking for need. That's why Shane Wright went to 4. And it wasn't picked. Maybe he was the number 2 player, the number 1 player, but teams went for need. I mean, New Jersey needed defense. They went for defense. Arizona went for big centers. They chose that route, and I think we're going to see that all through the draft, guys. I think that this is a draft that is so deep and got so much talent that's so close together that when you get up there, you're going to pick the best guy for what you need. And obviously, the one area that we aren't going to see is goaltenders, because there just is, this crop of goaltenders is weak.
Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say there's just no goalies. I mean, goalies don't get picked early anyway, unless you're a Spencer Knight type where you are head and shoulders above not just the other goalies, but your talent value, however they throw the stuff into the computer, is just so much higher than the skaters that teams are not going to throw early picks at goalies. Because first of all, most of them don't play right away anyway. And Florida went out and made the pick of Spencer Knight and spent all the money on Bobrovsky. And, now they have to figure out that balance of, I'm paying Bobrovsky, so I can't trade him and I have to play him, but I can't let Spencer Knight go to waste either.
Yep.
So
good point.
It's a tough situation, right? Because you make the pick, but you're wanting immediate help, and then maybe you get into a contract situation that you had to maybe put yourself into in order to attract Bobrovsky to sign the contract. Steven, any sort of thoughts on the first 10 picks at all? Anything that surprised you? Anything that you thought was good, was unequal? What were your thoughts on the first 10 picks?
Yeah, I kind of agree with the Shane Wright pick at Seattle. I thought that was good for them. As I said earlier, I think I think it could be good for him, and I think it's a great for Seattle. I think all the obviously Matthew Savoy, of course. You mentioned Carter Savoy. I think is who you're referring to is part of that namesake there, and he's pretty good. And so I hopefully, and Buffalo has had a few picks this first round because we didn't get to later on. But of course the deal with the Golden Knights will bring the Vegas connection in, getting a 16th pick because of the trade for Jack Eichel last season, and Buffalo getting back in return. They got back last year. They got back Peyton Krebs, who's a good young player, and then of course Alex Tuck, who had a strong return when he came back and now they got the 16th pick too because Vegas didn't make the playoffs. If they had gone further along in the playoff, if they made the playoffs and went further, the pick would have been further down. But so Buffalo actually benefited from that in getting a pick later on. But Buffalo is.
Can I add something to that? I don't
Yes.
think that Buffalo just fleeced them, because I think what we saw in the second half of the season from Jack Eichel, I don't think you've seen the old Jack Eichel yet, and I think you're going to see that. So this trade, in my estimation, can't really be evaluated for a little while down the road, because we have to see what Jack Eichel does. If he leads this team next year, new head coach, a full year of development. I mean, remember he didn't jump in the lineup till February. So I mean,
and then he was playing injured for a good part down the stretch there. When he came back, he hurt his. So he.
Yep.
And then and really the
lower
lineup,
body injury.
lower body injury, day to day, week to week, or whatever, game to game. But and the lineup shuffled so much there because of all the injuries Vegas had. So there wasn't really a flow to see who he was going to play with, because it was having a hard time getting established lineup. So we got to wait another year to see how that plays out. But Buffalo was looked busy. But those are a couple thoughts I had.
Let's do this, Scott. It's about halfway through the stream, so let's take some commercial breaks. We'll come back for the 11 through 20 picks, and so let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
The NCHC, where the best in college hockey compete, and the numbers back it up. In the past 8 years, 6 teams in national title games that are run of 4 consecutive national championships, 2 Hobey Baker winners, and 46 All-Americans. More than 70 alumni in the NHL with multiple Stanley Cup champions, a leader and innovator in the sport, including a one-of-its-kind pod. One conference, creating champions and improving the game. This is the NCHC.
Really, JR? You think you can still do this?
I'm focused.
You're way too old to hit that target from there.
I've been listening to everything you said. It's been running through my head, locked and loaded.
All right, still got it. Still got it.
Who's old now?
More than 140 live games from the nation's best college hockey conference. Ready for you wherever you are, however you want to watch. Your favorite team is on NCHC.TV. On your phone, tablet, or stream to your TV. Subscribe now to watch the best in college hockey at NCHC.TV. If it's NCHC hockey, it's on NCHC.TV.
And welcome back here, joined with Scott Strandy, Paul Hornstein, Stephen Marsh. Let's check through picks 11 through 20. So at 11, we talked about Connor Geekie a little bit. Again, the Arizona's second pick in the first round. We talked about how he could be an immediate impact. Columbus's second pick in the first round, also Denton Matichuk, defenseman from Moose Jaw. How about this? 64 points in 65 games in the WHL as a defenseman. That's unbelievable. Definitely needs some more offense in the blue line there in Columbus. Against Chicago, with that 13th overall pick, it does get Frank Nazar, a highly coveted center out of the U.S. development program. So I know probably is the start of what we thought was going to be with DeBrincat and Kirby Dach. Now it's going to be probably Frank Nazar. Winnipeg, with its first round selection, goes with Rutger McGorty, another U.S. 18 development program, a big right winger there for the U.S. program. And then Vancouver going overseas, Jonathan Lekari-Maki, the right winger out of Djurgården, Sweden. And then sticking over there in Sweden, Buffalo with its second pick number 16, Noah Ostlund, another center, again from Djurgården. Pick number 17, Joakim Kemmel. They're going to Nashville, a right winger out of Finland. Staying just over to the southeast, Dallas, going with Liam Bischel, a defenseman from Sweden. And then the Minnesota Wild, Liam Ogren at pick number 19, a left winger from Djurgården. 33 points, 58 points, 33 goals during his last season. And then running up the top 20, it is the Washington Capitals getting left winger Ivan Mironishenko, again from Russia. So I think we'll skip maybe some of the side notes for that, Scott, but anything that stood out to you in picks 11 through 20?
No, I think that's kind of status quo, kind of what I was thinking they would do. I mean, as much as I had insight to it. I do want to get to Paul Hornstein's comments, though, because now we've seen some college players go and some guys that have been drafted and are going back to college. And as we look live right now, Jimmy Snuggerud just went number 23 to St. Louis. Goodness gracious.
Well,
what a rivalry that's going to be for him and the Wild.
Yeah.
And the Avalanche.
Yes.
Well, first of all, even in a quote-unquote down year, we still see a bunch of guys from the national team development program go in the first round.
Always.
It's just, this program started in the late 90s. And while the quote-unquote upper management has had some of their issues over the years, their on-ice mission has not only been met, it's gone beyond, I think, what anybody thought. You've had years where there have been almost like double-digit players taken from that program in the first round, and it just continues to almost factory-like grind them out year after year after year after year. And you got
Paul. Let me interject something on that one before you jump into your players that were selected. But I went to see the All-Star game 2 years ago, the BioSteel All-Star game, and that was my first look at the U.S. NDTP. And when I got there, that was as close to professional hockey as you're going to see without being professional hockey. I mean,
right.
The guys live there; they live hockey 24/7, and that's why they've become so dominant. And so that's preparation not only for the NHL, the AHL, the ECHL, but also where you're leading us, the NCAA.
Well, yeah, and you have Cooley and Snuggerud, who are going to go up there and play for that other maroon and gold team, and will be dynamic. Michigan just clearly has decided, we're going to be like college basketball, where guys are going to be one and done, and we're just going to reload and reload and reload as they bring in Nazar and McGroarty. And I don't know how Cutter Gauthier ended up on the East Coast at BC, but he's clearly the outlier ending up there. But he might be the guy who ends up maybe is the guy who's the most sniperish of those five guys, and maybe even in the draft. And I've said it before on other shows connected to us that there have been places where I've seen that Cooley could end up being the best player out of this draft. So obviously only time can tell. And the thing about these guys is they just, like McGroarty, the puck just finds him. When he's on the ice, the puck just finds him. And it's just, guys just...
You can't teach that either, brother.
No, you can't. And Nazar, you're these big guys that he loves to go to the net. You just, they...
So, Paul, let me ask you this. Out of all those guys that you've seen picked right now, is there anybody that becomes the who's my caller, my Columbus kid that I'm thinking about? his brother is going to ASU on the transfer that made it last
You mean
year.
Sillinger?
Sillinger. Is there another Sillinger in this group so far, Paul? Or are they all going back to college?
You would think that these guys are all going to go back. I guess Cooley might be the one guy because of the team that he's been drafted by.
Nick is already grimacing from his Gophers. He doesn't want to see that happen.
No.
Maybe if he just blows people away at the training camp, but I don't see it. And you draft these guys that are committed to go play college hockey, and I think that most organizations at this point have a baseline of go play at least 1 year of college hockey.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And
Steven,
some of them too.
Let me ask Steven about this because you being in Vegas, you're like in the Russian headquarters. No secret that George McPhee wants every Russian player. He wants to at least try every Russian player that comes around. Nick's Minnesota Wild are grabbing Russian players like they're going on a style, and they got one that they're not even sure they can get back from Russia. We thought, I think I'm in consensus with you guys when I say this. We all kind of thought this might be a different year for Russian draft picks, right? No, at least not at this point. Steven?
This is an interesting situation because of, obviously the political aspect of this, what's happening with the country, with Russia and what's going on there. And but at the same time, it's you don't want to hurt the players because it's not necessarily their fault of what's happening with their country and the decisions that they're making and what they're doing. But it is weird because it's like, you got these the NHL and these teams are drafting still these Russian players, even though all that is going on. But these players are still trying to get and some of them probably want an opportunity to play in the NHL. Maybe there's a better opportunity, obviously, over here in the States than maybe they'll have in Russia. But it wouldn't be fair to the players, I don't think, if you hold them, if you keep them from having this moment, if they are deserving to have this moment of being drafted because of what's happening with the country and in that regard.
Yeah, and Scott,
Nick, is it better, Nick, to be a Russian and come to Minnesota than it is to come to Vegas because of the culture? And I'm talking about the weather. I'm talking about the slower pace. I'm talking about no strip.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Is that easier?
Well, if there's bears, you don't want to be named Ilya Bryzgalov, then no, that's your nightmare. But, to Steven's point too, when you take a step back and you actually analyze the situation, obviously we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow anywhere in the world and what political things may change or whatnot. But I think as you look at the draft and when you get to this point in the first round and then especially in rounds 2 through 7 tomorrow, you're not anticipating a player at least right away to be needed at the NHL level. So I think, at the end of it, you can probably get away with the Russian picks now because they're maybe 3 years away. Some of them maybe at best 2. And so maybe the landscape on the political aspect has changed or maybe it's slowed down for some folks. So you're kind of maybe playing that a little bit. I think the more concerning part is, and we briefly discussed it, is the current NHL players that are over in Russia that have a contractual obligation to play here in the NHL in the United States. And if there's going to be maybe some backlogs or some barricades per se on trying to get back.
Nick, is there stress in Minnesota right now over the thrill? Is there stress that he might not get back? And you mentioned 2 or 3 years. Does that give them, these players that are being drafted tonight, the opportunity to fulfill their military obligation in Russia before they come over? Or is that
you would hope
be wiped away?
You would hope so, if that stays the same. But for Minnesota sports fans, especially Minnesota Wild fans, there's the typical fan, which on a scale of 1 to 10, the stress level is at 9.9 right now. Because, here's your first franchise player since Marion Gaborik to really excite the fan base and really provide the offensive spark that this franchise has been missing for the better part of 12 to 13 years. So there's a high level of stress. But the one other black ace we have is a reporter named Michael Russo, and I got to give him so much credit for the digging that he's doing.
He's so good.
He's just incredibly connected, and not that he put a complete water ball on the fire, but did sort of just say, hey, it sounds like, we can see he's over there. It sounds like there was some conversations before the season's end about potential impacts on that. There doesn't seem to be at least any credible immediate threat to Kaprizov. But again, the stress level, I think, is still high because, as we know, things can change quite rapidly. And the Minnesota Wild are 100% a different team and not a Western Conference or a Central Division contending team without Kaprizov in the lineup. So we'll have to just kind of wait and see. But there are definitely some higher stress levels and blood pressure here up in the Twin Cities area.
Okay, I think we're up to 25. Steven,
But the Wild did sign Marc-Andre Fleury today for a couple of years, so that should bring the stress level down just a little bit.
Not unless you play Cam Talbot, even the last week before the playoffs, and decide to start a cold goaltender game one. But I digress from that. So let's finish up the draft picks here, shall we? Right? I had my own thoughts on that. I still think Fleury, the writing was on the wall that Fleury was going to be the playoff starter. The fact that the coaching staff didn't give him more starts before the playoffs to at least get him in a rhythm. Goalies are a creature of habit. Really surprised me a little bit, but I digress from that. The playoffs are over. So with the 21 and some other picks that we have here, so Pittsburgh and their first pick in the first round, they go with Owen Pickering, a defenseman from Swift Current in the WHL, 33 points in 62 games for him. Anaheim, quite a nice group of young players there down in California. Nathan is that Gauthier or is it Nathan Gauthier, a center from Quebec? St. Louis, again, getting Jimmy Snuggerud. You mentioned that as the pick was live there, Scott. There will be many Minnesota fans that are going to be wanting to fly down to St. Louis and have a few words with the Blues fans and the Blues upper management. And then, of course, Minnesota Wild, we talked about Russian players getting drafted. They get a right winger, Danila Yurov, again, coming over from Magnitogorsk, Russia. I probably botched that name, but that's all right. So that is the picks that we have so far.
They're not listening,
24. I certainly hope not. Or maybe they are. Maybe they have hacked my computer. Who knows? Again, no surprises here for me, but Paul, we talk about influences in the draft and different strategies. And as Scott has said, it seems to be a draft based on need with some of the talent level that's there. At some point, when do drafts start to become a pick where the best player is available?
I think probably on a regular basis, it probably starts happening about midway through the second round.
Yeah,
when you start getting to that bottom half of the second round, you're usually seeing teams pick a lot more for need and less best player available, at least for a round or two, because that's where the talent level almost hits that second tier. I think as you get to the fourth, fifth, and sixth rounds, you start taking the best player available, mostly because you're not 100% sure how those guys are going to turn out. And those second round picks and those third round picks are very valuable. You still see a lot of NHL players that get drafted in the second and third rounds having big impacts on their teams. So you try to have, that's where you start having that balance on a regular basis between need and best player available. And that's kind of where it transitions. You also will see teams have habits. Like when the Red Wings take a European player, does it ever surprise you? No. When Chicago takes American-born players, does it really surprise you as they just take the first high school player in the draft, as they made a trade with the Maple Leafs for Peter Mrazek, and they took a third other maroon and gold guy and high school defenseman Sam Rinzel that's supposed to go and play at that team that we don't like to mention up in Minneapolis. But he's a high school player. Dude, I had never seen him play, so I don't want to sit here and obviously also showing the transition. Like that there was a time where you see a lot of high school players take it. Now you don't see the high school players take it because those kids are the kids that end up in the national development team program. So for a high school kid to be considered good enough to be taken in the first round now, that's kind of actually big news.
It is.
You know, it really is. And, you know, to your point, Paul, you know, with the way that drafts have evolved over time and the way they've evolved here, just a little NCAA comments. You know, you talk about, you know, the national development team and how much of a mark they've really started to put on the NHL draft in the last few years. For that other maroon and gold team, you've got Matthew Nyes, Jimmy Snuggerud, and Logan Cooley.
They're okay.
As a St. Cloud State fan, that scares me.
It should. It should. You just better hope they don't stay long.
Yeah. Well, if we have any indication from anybody last name Lucius, maybe they don't. Who knows? So at least as far as the live picks, Scott, I think we've got all the live picks so far.
I think we're up to date.
We're up to date. So with about 10 minutes left here in our episode, is there any other topics we want to throw around?
Well, I want to throw this one out there because I just want to pat myself on the back again. Last year or last April, when I went to the Frozen Four, I made the comment that there were two teams that were there to win a national championship and two teams that would take the national championship if they won it, but were really there to advance players to the NHL. And it was clearly obvious. And it's still showing up again today as you look at the draft. I mean, look at Michigan, what they did. Look at Minnesota, what they did. Those teams are not recruiting players to go 3-4 years in their program. They're drafting players that are NHL close. And as Paul's already talked about, maybe 1-2 years away. So to me, as an NCAA guy and a pro guy, I kind of have mixed feelings. I want to get Steven's thought on this because he's been in the AHL scene quite a bit as well. But to me, that's not a problem, but it's a difference. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's you know, it's always. I think we saw last year when the NCAA season ended, we saw the someone get tryout agreements or get opportunities to play with AHL clubs, and I think we've talked about previously how it seems like the window has closed or the gap has closed between NCAA or equivalent players that are in their college age days or junior days, and to players in the professional ranks, and that they're more prepared for that game than maybe they were before you go. So it shouldn't be that big of a surprise anymore when these guys can get in there and really compete in the lineup right away. I mean, I saw in Henderson with Brendan Brisson. Yeah. You know, he got in there and 8 minutes in his first, you know, game, he gets a goal, you know? So, I mean, they're able to get acclimated a lot faster to the pro game than they did before. And I just think that just shows you how much the development is at that level with the NCAA certainly, and certainly the players that play overseas too. Those leagues are getting better too, and the junior leagues and all that. So it's just the level of hockey is getting better everywhere, which makes the league better as a whole. The NHL, the AHL.
Let me throw this back to Paul because Paul, is this good or bad for NCAA hockey when you have the blue blood have programs versus maybe the smaller teams that have not? I mean, you and I have talked about this many times on the NCAA scene that the Quinnipiacs in years past, the Atlantic hockey teams that fight their way in and get the 16 seed or 15 or 14 in the NCAA tournament and they pull an upset or whatever it might be. But where we're at right now, is it good or bad for NCAA hockey?
Well, I guess as long as you have a situation where you almost have to take it program by program. Okay. You can't blame those M teams. Our buddy Eddie Christian likes to say the big M and the little M.
Yeah. Shout out to Eddie.
That you take these guys that are going to be first round picks. At the same time, knowing that they could leave in a year or two, where Denver, who is now the defending national champion, has decided to take that we want the 3 and 4 year guys approach. And, basically it's going to be a program by program thing. And I think the dynamic changes as we add teams. Yeah, so it's good and bad, but I think as long as you add teams and you have more lockers, I think that it can balance each other out.
Totally agree with you. Nick, I'm going to throw it back to you because we're running short on time. But the one thing I wanted to ask you was when you look at NCAA program, you're really close to St. Cloud and we're really close to St. Cloud. Your thoughts on where NCAA hockey is in relationship to the draft picks right now?
It's starting to fall behind, I think. I think what you're seeing is with these development programs is, they're the ones that are getting the recognition for getting these guys to a certain skill level. And then, as you mentioned, these guys are going to these top tier programs that need essentially some guys with an NIL sort of, selling point to them. That's your Snuggeroods, that's your Coolies, that's your Matthew Nyes, just to name a few for the Gophers. And then again, on Michigan side, Matty Berniers and others as well. So the NCAA just does not have the swath of talent that we're seeing overseas, north of the border in Canada, and then obviously with the U.S. National Development Program. And so it's a transition period. And so at the end of it, it's going to put the NCAA on notice a little bit. And that's why you're seeing, I think over the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of players coming in from the Alberta Junior Hockey League. They were the third group, I think, that were leading in NCAA recruits. And so you're starting to see a bit of a migration in NCAA recruiting because the better U.S. kids are going to those development programs. And unfortunately, it's forcing the hands of NCAA teams to look elsewhere for their better prospects that they believe they can get and still be able to create an exciting environment. So I don't know if it's all bad, but it's definitely forcing a change of landscape on the NCAA side.
Guys, let me get this in real quick. You guys, I'm sure we'll cover this in the next few weeks to a month. It's overshadowed by the draft because the draft is now and we're doing a live show. But kind of a historic period for the National Hockey League and professional hockey with Mike Greer being named the GM and you've got a bunch of women that have been named assistant GMs, and the AHL's got its first woman bench coach. And I didn't want that to get completely overshadowed by the fact that we're doing a show during the draft. So
good stuff. We will definitely cover that. That is on the upcoming agenda. We're at number 27 right now. San Jose Sharks are about to make that pick, and people will catch up with it. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do it. Nick, final thoughts? You want to wrap it up?
Sure. I'll wrap it up here. Again, NHL Draft, a couple of surprises, but overall, I think things landed where I think most of us thought they were going to land. And again, these are young kids, right? These are kids with bright futures. These are kids that still have a lot to prove, whether it's going back to juniors for a little bit for some. Some are going to make an NHL jump right away. Others maybe spend some time in the minors. So it's it's a life-changing night for these youngsters. Congratulations to all that are involved, and good luck to them as well as the organizations that are making these picks. And again, growing the game of hockey, it starts here. It starts with the young kids, the influx of talent. So this is where it all starts. So that's it for me, Scott.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time. You can find us. Most of them will be pre-recorded. We're glad that you tuned in on Twitter Live tonight, and we'll say good night.
We'll see you good night.